Donald Trump prepares to be sworn in as US president. On the eve of his inauguration, he promises a personal and sincere vision for America's future. But the new president faces a deeply divided nation. Thousands flock to Washington to support him. But others take to the streets questioning whether or not he's fit to lead. I'm live in Washington as America awaits the Trump presidency. Also on the programme, dozens of people are missing after an avalanche in Italy. And would you vote for a council tax rise? Why one local authority has called a referendum.
From Washington, this is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening from Washington, where tonight Donald Trump has arrived from New York City to complete his journey to the White House and to become the 45th President of the United States. In less than 23 hours' time, he will take the traditional oath of office and give his inaugural address, which his spokesman said will be a thoughtful, personal and sincere vision. But Mr. Trump will deliver it to an unprecedented backdrop of protests, boycotts and anger. Our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports on whether the incoming president can heal the divisions.
Everything now is different. The president-elect flying directly into Andrews Air Force Base. His private Trump-branded plane a thing of the past. By noon tomorrow, this will be America's new first family. Trump's 10-year-old son Barron leading the way. And then it was the turn of Donald Trump himself, accompanied by his wife Melania. It's 71 days since his stunning and improbable election victory, and America's next commander-in-chief had a first chance to practice his official salute before heading to the cavalcade that is bringing him into Washington. In the city itself, on the west side of Capitol Hill, the stage is now set for the handover of power. But tomorrow comes with a degree of uncertainty rarely seen in the United States, for almost no one believes the Trump presidency will be conventional or predictable. The Vice President-elect, Mike Pence, tried to reassure Americans today the new administration is fully prepared for any crisis or emergency that occurs in the coming days.
Our job is to be ready on day one. The American people can be confident that we will be.
The political battle lines are already being drawn. The Democratic leader in the Senate accusing the Trump team of major ethical lapses and of appointing fellow billionaires to the most important positions.
The president-elect isn't draining the swamp with his cabinet picks. He's filling it up.
Think about Muslims.
The other arena for Trump opponents will be on the streets. Last night, activists dressed in the infamous garb of the KKK accused the new administration of having links to the far right and to the white supremacist movement. And elsewhere in the city, others are highlighting the threat they see to America's LGBT community. But the major protests are planned for Saturday, when tens of thousands will take to the streets.
One big question going forward is how does opposition to the Trump presidency take shape? With the Democratic Party leaderless and adrift, are we now entering an era of direct action and street protests?
And we will make America great again.
But for the next 24 hours, the focus will be on that promise. And on this man, America's 45th president, who was speaking a few minutes ago to supporters and preparing to take the reins of power. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Almost 1 million people are expected to attend tomorrow's events, with Trump supporters travelling from far and wide to be here. Now, he has struck a real chord with many and done it in places where few predicted success. Our Correspondent Penny Marshall reports from Bethlehem in Pennsylvania, a state which had not voted Republican for almost 30 years. Trump supporters there told her about their hopes and dreams for the future.
That's a duffel bag for us to bring all our Trump stuff in. That's wonderful.
The DeFranco sisters don't like much about Washington, but they're heading there to see their man take office and reclaim the city and the country for people like them. Mary Ellen is a doctor.
I have hope for the first time in a long time, 12 years, 16 years, that things can change, that things can get better. Like things get better for my daughter, for my grandchildren.
Joanna remembers when 25,000 people worked at the town's steel plant. Now no one works there. But Bethlehem, Pennsylvania has a new king who calls himself the King of Jobs.
Can he deliver? That's when it begins there.
I think if anybody can, he can. I think he has a drive, and I think he has a genuine concern for the United States.
Donald Trump owes people in communities like Bethlehem his victory. And now Middle America's waiting for Washington to listen to them. John Steinmetz had never voted until Donald Trump, watching 16 elections come and go from the safety of his man cave where he restores old cars.
So what was it about Mr. Trump that got you up and out?
Well, he's not a politician, for one thing. And I think the politicians are the ones that are ruining the country.
He's going to shake them up.
He's going to shake them up, which he has already done that.
Do you think they look a bit rattled?
Oh, yeah, they are ruffled. You see it on the news every day. They are ruffled.
At the local pizza parlour, Lawrence Napoli is optimistic the new president will prioritise the needs of the people above the interests of what he calls the elite.
We won, and we're pretty happy about that. So I see him as being another President Reagan to her generation. That's why I always say to her.
The town's buses are being prepared, ready to carry hundreds tomorrow to Washington to see history. Those who felt left behind here have a new American dream. Penny Marshall, ITV News, Pennsylvania.
Well, our Washington correspondent Robert Moore joins me now. Now, Robert, we're told the speech will be sincere and personal. Can he bring America together, though?
Well, you're right. We're being told that the kind of overarching theme of this inaugural address is going to be national unity. The Trump spokesman actually said to us today that the address, and he used a rather grand term for it, would be a philosophical document to bring America together. In reality, the acrimony, the division is actually only increasing. Hispanics today are absolutely outraged that no Latino is a member of the cabinet. Democrats are appalled at what they see as how extreme some of the nominees are. So really, it's true to say that the political skirmishing here is already utterly underway. No sense at all of national unity, no sense at all of goodwill.
Okay, Robert, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Well, Theresa May, or rather later in the programme, I'll be hearing from a former White House aide who will be giving me an insider view on the significance of tomorrow's ceremony.
As the clock strikes 12, the new president takes control of the nuclear codes, you name it. At that moment, President Obama becomes former President Obama, and it all goes on Donald Trump's shoulders.
Coming up a little bit later now. Theresa May told ITV News today that she's looking forward to meeting Donald Trump to discuss a free trade deal between the US and the UK. The two leaders are set to meet within weeks, we're told. The Prime Minister was at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where she spoke to our political editor, Robert Peston.
The World Economic Forum in Davos, where the global elite gather to sort out the world.
It's my first Davos, yes, so I didn't quite know what to expect.
And here's the latest reluctant recruit to this exclusive club.
When you said just a couple of months ago that citizens of the world are citizens of nowhere, were you thinking about the chief executives and leaders who come to Davos?
I think it's important for companies to recognise the obligations and responsibilities they have wherever they're operating. And if I can give you an example, today I was part of a panel on modern slavery. Bringing that modern slavery agenda to Davos, I think, is important because businesses have a role in working with governments in eradicating modern slavery.
Absolutely take your word that you want to promote free trade, but they see leaving the single market as a great act of protectionism.
It's not at all. Indeed, what I've set out earlier this week is that when we leave the European Union, I want us to have a free trade agreement with the European Union, which will enable us to have the maximum access for trading with and operating within the single European market for both goods and services.
What can we offer them to get the best possible trade deal? Some have said you've got to offer a bit of preferential access, at least, to Europeans in terms of entry to this country.
We're looking at the rules that we will put in place in relation to immigration, but what is crucial is that we will have a system where it is the British government that makes those decisions.
Banks saying they're moving quite a lot of people outside the UK. Can you persuade them to change their minds?
Well, I've had a positive meeting with a number of CEOs of banks and other financial institutions here at Davos. I'm confident that we can negotiate a good trade agreement with the European Union that will enable us to continue to see that strong financial services sector in the City of London benefiting the UK.
One of the things that, again, seems to differentiate you from Donald Trump is you say free trade brilliant. Some see him as a protectionist. Are you going to give him a lecture on the benefits of free trade?
Well, what I expect to be talking to Donald Trump about when we meet is actually the enthusiasm that America has shown for a trade agreement with the United Kingdom. I think that's very important for us, and we will be keen to have those discussions.
Prime Minister, many thanks.
Thank you.
The Prime Minister there speaking to our political editor, Robert Peston, a little bit earlier. Now, still to come on the ITV Evening News, the desperate search for survivors in the snow after an avalanche in Italy. And Martin McGuinness on why he's stepping down from frontline politics. Those stories and more after the break. Join me then. Hello and welcome back to Washington, where right now President-elect Trump is in his own hotel, the Trump International, just a stone's throw from the White House, where he's making his final preparations, we're told, ahead of tomorrow's inauguration. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But before that, news from Italy now, where up to 30 people are still missing, feared dead, after an avalanche buried a hotel in a mountain resort. It struck the Hotel Rigopiano late last night in the central Abruzzo region. It followed a series of earthquakes, and the scene is not far from the town of Amatrice, which was flattened by a devastating quake in the summer. Rebecca Barry has the latest.
Through the night, rescuers battled across heavy snow. The only way to get through was on skis because the avalanche had blocked all the roads. Finally, they find what was a 4-star hotel. The lobby destroyed by a wall of snow. The comfortable rooms enjoyed by holidaymakers, now entombed. This is what the hotel used to look like. 30 people, including children who were inside, are now feared dead. The mountainous Abruzzo region in central Italy was hit by 4 earthquakes yesterday, triggering an avalanche which engulfed the hotel, shunting parts of the building 30 feet down the mountain. These texts reveal the growing concerns of someone stranded. The final message, asking how they are, gets no reply.
Aiuto, 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 chiama tutti.
This man says his friend phoned him, shouting help. He survived, but only because he went to get something from his car as the avalanche struck. His wife and 2 children are still missing. The army's been drafted in to help, but hopes of finding anyone else beneath here still alive are fading. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Martin McGuinness, the former Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland, has tonight announced he is retiring from frontline politics. The 66-year-old recently triggered fresh elections at Stormont after resigning in protest over a scandal. But the former IRA commander has been forced to step down for good after being diagnosed with a rare genetic condition, as our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
No one in Northern Ireland made the journey from violent to peaceful politics so successfully as Martin McGuinness. But in the last hour, he's announced his career in frontline politics effectively over.
This has taken a serious toll on me in the course of recent times. And the honest answer is that I'm not physically able to fight an intensive election campaign over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks. So I will not be a candidate in the forthcoming elections.
By the age of 21 in 1972, McGuinness admits he was already the second in command of the Provisional IRA in Londonderry. And even when he moved to the political side of the Republican movement, he was a hardliner.
At the end of the day, it will be the cutting edge of IRA which will bring freedom.
But that put him in the ideal position, along with Gerry Adams, to persuade the IRA to eventually embrace peaceful politics. In time, he and Ian Paisley surprised everyone by not only going into government together, but apparently enjoying it. Yet he still believes unionists have a long road to travel.
A word that I rarely hear from any of them is the word reconciliation. And that presented huge difficulties for me, because here was I, reaching out, even putting Republicans under pressure by some of the things that I'd done, meeting with Queen Elizabeth on a number of occasions.
He's not quitting altogether, but Martin McGuinness's years of personal and political risk-taking now appear to be over. Carl Dinnan, ITV News.
6 British citizens have been killed in a bus crash in Saudi Arabia after completing a pilgrimage to the Muslim holy city of Mecca. Glasgow's Central Mosque has identified 2 of the victims as Talat Aslam and her husband Mohammed. The other victims are said to be members of one family from Manchester, including a 2-month-old baby. A mother and her partner have been jailed for child cruelty and drug offences following the death of 4-year-old Poppy Widdowson. Michaela Pike and John Ritting allowed Poppy to eat Class A drugs, including heroin, for months before she died. Southern Rail is urging the RMT to suspend strikes next week, saying they're happy to begin formal talks with the union. The RMT say they were excluded from talks between Southern and the drivers' union ASLEF. And the Queen has made her annual visit to the WI in Sandringham. The visit was one of her first public appearances since suffering ill health over Christmas. Council taxpayers in Surrey could see their bills rise by 15% to help pay for a massive shortfall in funding for social care. The Conservative local authority says Westminster cuts forced the move. Among residents who could be forced to pay are the Chancellor Philip Hammond and the Health Secretary himself, Jeremy Hunt. Here's our political correspondent, Libby Vina.
It may be one of the richest parts of the country, but in Surrey this afternoon there was disbelief at the prospect of council tax bills going up by 15%.
Well, what can you say? Who would want a 15% hike in their council tax?
No, that's a big chunk of money, and I think for a lot of people that will be too much.
Well, that's outrageous, isn't it, eh?
A shock maybe, but the council leader hopes they will back his tax rise in a referendum this May. He says it's the only way to stave off further cuts.
I certainly know the books in Surrey. I've been doing them long enough now, and I know that we do need this money. We have a gap which we cannot fund without asking the residents to help us. It is for them that we're doing this, not for us.
A 15% rise would put up bills for a Band D property by nearly £200. Current rules limit increases to 5%, 3% of which is ring-fenced for social care. Cabinet ministers whose constituents would be affected include Philip Hammond, Chris Grayling and Jeremy Hunt. The Health Secretary also happens to be the man who the council blame for big cuts in social care they've already had to make.
This is the reality of years of cuts. A care home for the elderly set to close its doors this summer. And it's not alone. Surrey County Council is set to act 6 in all, it says, to help balance the books.
And it's why some say they will vote yes in the referendum.
I think if it's going for useful purposes like social care for the elderly, I think it would be worth voting for, definitely.
But whether a majority agree with that is far from certain. Libby Vina, ITV News, Surrey.
And finally, when the eyes of the world are on events here tomorrow, behind the scenes there will be a massive operation to make sure everything goes exactly to plan. Now, the ceremony isn't just the formal handover of power, it is also deeply symbolic for the American people. And one person who knows exactly what it takes to organise is Laura Schwartz, who was a senior aide to Bill Clinton and stood alongside him at his 1997 inauguration. Laura gave me her insider's view.
Tomorrow is democracy in action, Mary. This is where, as the clock strikes 12, the new president takes control of the nuclear codes, you name it. At that moment, President Obama becomes former President Obama, and it all goes on Donald Trump's shoulders.
There's a lot of ceremonial, there's a lot to see, a lot to look at, it's very grand and so on. But the meaning is very important. What goes on there really matters.
Since the days of George Washington, the inauguration of the president has been a peaceful transition of power, whether from the same party to the same party or from different parties to each other. And in that ceremony, it is very important to occur the oath of office, which is administered by the Supreme Court Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Tomorrow, President-elect Trump is going to be using Abraham Lincoln's Bible, as well as a Bible his mother gave to Donald Trump when he graduated from Sunday school. On top of it,
there is going to be a huge amount of organisation happening in there right now.
Oh my gosh, there is. It started last September when the first nail was drilled into that platform that we see before us that the president-elect will stand on tomorrow. Right now, they're putting all the seats down. They're putting the names of who will sit in each and every seat, and the military is doing all the final sound checks.
Everybody talks about Donald Trump throwing all the rules out and doing it his way. Are we going to see that?
Up on the platform for the inaugural address, I believe he has to say, together we can all fix this country and have an impact on the world. That truly would show that Donald Trump has moved from a campaign disposition to now one of governance.
So, in a sense, the presidency is far bigger than one personality,
Much
no
bigger.
matter how huge.
No matter how big that personality might be, it's still bigger than that.
Thank you. Laura Schwartz there. And that's all from me for now. But tonight, here on ITV, there is a special programme called President Trump, America's Greatest Gamble. That's from 7:30 p.m. And tomorrow, Tom Bradby will have full coverage of all those momentous events live from 4 p.m. And he'll also be here in Washington for tonight's news at 10. But from me and all the team, have a great evening. Bye-bye.